Okay, so if you witnessed someone being brutally attacked, or if you witnessed something gruesome happening to another person and you did nothing to stop it, it would probably really affect you for the rest of your life, and it's likely that you'd probably feel some extreme guilt from that. Well, this is relevant because in an article written by Kurt Obeski, who was a personal friend and business partner to Stieg Larsson, it's revealed that he also experienced something this drastic that affected him. When he was 15 years old, he watched a group of his friends brutally gang rape another girl, and he did nothing to interfere. A few days later, he actually tried calling that girl and apologizing to her, but she told him that she could never forgive him. So obviously that greatly affected Larsson, and it haunted him for the rest of his life. His friend also recalls that if Larsson saw a news report of another woman who was attacked or murdered at the hands of a man, he would often start crying even though he didn't know the woman at all. So it's pretty clear that this distaste he developed for the mistreatment of women at the hands of men was really important to him in his life, and it found its way into his writing. Book critic Sarah Weinman had this to say about Larsson's obvious influence. She said, "The books reflect both Larsson's sense of righteous indignation about how women are treated in Swedish society and overall society, and his love of crime fiction. It was clear to me how much his heart and soul comes through, even filtered through heavily edited translation, and you simply cannot fake that sort of wonder-filled enthusiasm about characters and knowledge. Readers know that and sense it." So obviously this personal event in his life had a huge impact on the content of his stories, but where does the rest of his style come from? Well, I found a lot of online articles that listed authors such as Agatha Christie, Sarah Paretsky, Elizabeth George, and Val McDermid as Larsson's favorite and most inspirational, influential writers. A lot of those are actually backed up by personal quotes from friends who knew him, and it's actually, in some of Larsson's books, there are actually names of those writers kind of thrown in there, whether it's a book that someone's reading or whatnot. So even though he didn't really directly talk about his influences, it is clear that those were some of his favorite writers. The blog for the book, The Tattooed Girl, which is actually written as sort of a backstory to Larsson's series, talks about why these authors were influential. For example, one post says that Larsson liked Paretsky for her fearlessness, her smart political point of view, and her tough female private investigator. Now, these are all elements that, if you get the chance to read the books, are very, very clearly a part of Larsson's writing. So it's kind of obvious that Larsson had a like for this sort of writing, and there's a pattern there that he applied to his own writing. There are also many online articles that talk about the influence or the potential influences for Larsson's main female character, Lisbeth. Lisbeth is a genius, arguably. She's a computer hacker who's very, very skilled, and she's a strong-willed person who was the victim of sexual violence. Now, many online sources suggest that Lisbeth was based off of Peter O'Donnell's Modesty Blaise character, who is like Lisbeth in the sense that she comes from a very rough childhood and kind of bad background, and also has a very specific set of skills. So there's also the suggestion that others give that Lisbeth was based off of Carol O'Connell's novels, where her character Mallory is also a heroine very similar to Lisbeth because of the background and the skill set and the sort of strong-willed character. So there's a lot of online articles that list different influences like this, but the one I found most useful was actually Larsson's own opinion. He only ever gave one interview before he died, but in that interview about his novels, he said that his main inspiration for Lisbeth was through Pippi Longstocking, which I thought was kind of really interesting, from the children's books. And he said, "I considered Pippi Longstocking. What would she be like today? What would she be like as an adult? What would you call a person like that? A sociopath? Hyperactive? Wrong. She simply sees society in a different light. I'll make her 25 years old and an outcast. She has no friends and is deficient in social skills. That was my original thought." And I thought this was really interesting because I think it's really clear through my research and my own reading of the novels that Larson obviously put a huge amount of himself into these stories. So these authors that he liked obviously influenced him enough for him to put their names in his books. And so I think it's easy to understand why he would be influenced enough to make his characters a certain way because of their writing. Thank you.